Hello, Farmer Jason here at Way Fruit Farm. We've been doing a video series, and this is our next one in the series. In our videos, what we like to do is we like to do some fun stuff that happens on the farm, but also some educational. And this is the first of a several-part educational series. What we're calling this one is Pruning, or as I like to call it, Trimming 101. What we're going to do is we're going to cover some of the basics of what it takes to keep fruit trees healthy. Now, one of the things that it takes to really keep the fruit trees healthy is properly pruning them. Pruning is something that I actually really get into. I actually really like pruning the apple trees and all the other trees. Every fruit tree needs pruned, but at different times. Right now we're in early March, which is perfect time for pruning apple trees. You can prune an apple tree anywhere from when the leaves fall off, which anymore in Pennsylvania is somewhere between late November through when the leaves start coming back on, which should be early April to mid-April. So normally we prune from sometime in late November through middle of April, and that's for our geographic location here in central Pennsylvania. That may vary depending upon where you're at. But that's the first part that's important, and that's just for apple trees. Now, if you're doing peach trees or cherry trees, those have to be done once it gets warm. If you prune a peach or a cherry tree, in early winter, you at most kill all of your crop off and sometimes even kill the tree. So you do not want to prune those until what we do is once we're done pruning the apple trees in mid-April, then we bounce over to the peach trees. You can try it a little bit earlier. Sometimes, depending upon your location, you can start late March, but I like to wait till April just to make sure it is. The peach trees are pruned a whole different way too. If you look behind me over there, that is actually our peach orchard. They're going to be pruned a completely different way than we prune the apple trees. But we'll go over that in detail in one of our next videos coming up. But what we're talking about today is apples. Now, the reason you prune is important. What we do is we want to prune the fruit trees so we come up with really pretty, really large fruit. What happens if you don't prune is you get really small, sort of yellowish or greenish fruit. The more you prune, the bigger apples get and the better color they get. If I didn't prune this is a gala. If you don't prune a gala and you have lots of shade on those trees, all they do is they stay very yellow or even a little bit greenish in color. So it's very important for the quality of the fruit to prune properly. So that's why we're doing it, as well as it helps keep the tree healthy. It keeps it reinvigorated, and it just does a lot of positive things for that. But the big thing is fruit quality and fruit size. Now, what we do here is we choose a central leader standard. This is actually a tree that we grafted. This was one type of a tree. We actually grafted another tree right to it. So where you see the yellow is where we went from an older style tree to a different variety here on top. And it has three that come out. I think this is kind of cool. Right in here, we oftentimes get birds' nests. The birds love to live right in these little holes. But this tree really exemplifies what we want. We want a central leader. And so what you have coming out of the center of it is, out of this center trunk, you have one leader that goes way up high. And then off it, you have these little feathers. This is going to look somewhat bare, especially if you have a tree at home that you have not pruned in quite a while. You're going to see this one's much thinner. Now, what you see right here is this is what we're going for. When you're pruning, there's a lot of stuff that's garbage, but then there's stuff that's good. Right there is fruit buds. And each tree has a little bit different size of fruit buds on it. And that's what we're going for. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to prune off the garbage. Over here on the other side, I have a tree that's been unpruned as of yet. And so this one is what you have prior to pruning or trimming. And so you can see how all these big branches go up. And right now it doesn't look that impressive. But when they all get leaves on them, what it does is it completely shades this good fruit wood in here. These little craggly branches are oftentimes what give you the best fruit. And you can actually see the buds already. The buds get set the previous summer. So these buds got set last July. And so now we have all of these little fruit buds hanging on these in here in the tree. And so you can actually see them already starting to come out. You can see them already hanging on there. And what's going to happen is that's where your best fruit's going to be. These are called water suckers. And they're going to have some fruit buds on them, but most of this is leaf buds. And so they're going to have some fruit, but a lot of leaves. And that leaves is going to shade and also take the energy from the other tree. So that's why we prune this stuff off, and we're trying to get that good stuff opened up. Now, both the trees I showed you right there are semi-dwarf trees. we also on this farm have quite a few dwarf trees. This is going to be a dwarf tree right here. And so these are a new variety for us called Zestar. They're actually one of the first things to bud, and you can actually already, even though it's early March here, you can start to see their buds really growing, where you can see that we have lots of fruit. And so if you go through and count on this tree, it has hundreds of fruit blooms already. Even though we've trimmed off a lot of these suckers, you know, all this fruit's left behind, and all that fruit's going to be exposed to the sun. One of the things that I like saying about pruning and trimming is the fact that what you're trying to do is get the sun to the fruit. Fruit loves sun. Trees are solar panels. And so all these leaves are going to suck up all that energy, and also the fruit just loves being exposed to that. As part of it, the fruit loves to see sun. And so we've got to get these apples out into the sun, and we've got to get rid of those suckers that just take up leaves. And that's what our real goal in pruning is. And by doing it, you keep the trees healthy and small. Now, what we're going to do as we go on in this series is we're going to go through each type of tree with the standard trees, the semi-dwarf, and the dwarf trees, all being pruned similar but a little different. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do an episode on exactly what you're going to want to take out of those trees. But that's not in the 101. This is mainly just to cover the basic topics right now of when and how you're to do it basically. So we'll keep working at all the details, but that is what we're doing for now. All right, so what we want to do in this is I want to explain to you how important it is to keep trimming yearly, how important it is to keep your trees maintained. What I have behind me here is a 1-year tree, a tree that was trimmed 1 year ago. So this tree, we went through and we pole sawed it last season. You can actually see where I took some bigger chunks out right in here, and up top there, right in here, as you can see where I pulled out the big chunks. You can see how the tree grew back around it. And you can see I still have lots of our apple buds out and exposed to the sun. We have some work to do on it. We have these suckers that are gonna have to come off, but as a whole, it's not bad. And I'll show you a second tree. This one grew a little bit more than the first one. We have a little bit more suckering on this, but again, overall, you know, needs a little bit of work, but it's not gonna take that much time. Now, what happens though, if you don't keep up that regular work, is year 1 after you prune them, it doesn't change that much. But when you get to year 2, it changes dramatically. Those little suckers that look really tiny and easy to pull off grow massive. Look at this tree. Look all the way up at the top. You can see how tall the suckers are. Now, instead of just being little cute things that are a foot tall, they're now 4 feet tall. Those little suckers that were on the other are now big branches, everything that are grown. And you can see, especially if we come down here, you can see how they can go from just a little bit of a tree to a massive tree. So what happened was, I didn't prune these last season because we had had a lot of wetness the previous year and that spring. And what happened was, we have a really steep hillside that I'm going to show you me pole sawing on, that we were afraid to take the tractors across. So we didn't prune them. Always a bad idea. We were scared for our safety on it because we've slid some tractors on this hillside before. And so we just didn't prune, and I really wish we had, because now we're having to fight them a lot more. So I'm having to pull out a lot more of my pole saw. You can see down here, the first tree, when they get really big like that, you've got to take even a bigger chunk out of them. So what happens is, if you prune them every year, they keep a nice section of buds, a nice easy thing. But whenever you don't, you have to really come in and hack it back. And so we'll not get as much production off of these trees going into next year, but it's just part of the cost of us not keeping up on our daily business. All right, I'm gonna take you up and we're gonna show some pole sawing on the hillside up here. All right, now where we're at here is a spot where we had a little catastrophe the other year. We were taking a tractor across here, and this hillside was so steep that literally the tractor slid down in, and we actually had to cut down 2 trees to get through here. And so we cut down these 2 trees and brought the tractor straight down because I could not get it back up. So not all farming is safe, and this is why we didn't prune this last year, and now I'm paying the cost. So what we did in the off season here was we actually leveled this out a little bit and called it what we would call terrace it a little bit, so that way we can get the tractors across here without sliding, hopefully. And so, but what it does is it makes it really hard to pole saw and makes it sort of messy. So I'm going to show you a little bit of pole sawing. The problem is, whenever you do wait too long, it makes it much harder to get it done. So now I'm gonna have to pull saw more out of these trees than what I would have had to if we kept up yearly. That's not saying that you never pull saw whenever you do it yearly, but the longer you wait, the bigger the branches get and the harder it gets. I do recommend pull sawing all the time. We're going to go into further detail in this video and in further videos of how much of what to pull saw out. This is just to give you a brief idea of what we're pull sawing out right now, just to give you a brief overview that it is important and that it does take some work. So I'm going to start up. We're going to pull saw a few things here, and then we'll keep talking more about the basics of trimming. I thought I might fall in that whole process. That would have made good camera, but I didn't, luckily. So this, again, I'm not going to go into great detail in this video as to what exactly we took out. It just shows you that I take out a lot, and out here I have to keep moving doing it. If we look out over here, you can see I have my guys that trim for me, that prune for me, coming up behind us, and so I have to keep moving at a pretty good pace. So we don't mess around with it. Once you learn how to do it, it becomes very quick to do it. Now in the next video, what these are is semi-dwarf trees. The next video we're going to go into will describe exactly how to prune the semi-dwarf trees. These are actually Cortlands. They're a little bit harder. Cortlands like to only produce from second year wood, which means like some other trees will produce off these suckers, where these only like to do off these draping branches. So they need to be definitely opened up very good just to keep it open up. So Cortlands are a little different than some other varieties. If you do prune a Cortland, what you need to do is make sure you're leaving lots of these feathers. But again, we'll go into detail in the next video. All right, what we're gonna do here is I wanted to give you a little update of how it's going in this row. In our pruning basics here, what I wanted to show you was how much we took out of the trees. And so you can see just how much we've pulled out. You know, I mean, big branches. If you're doing this at home, you know, big branches we've pulled out. Stuff that's almost hard for me to lift up. And so if you're doing this at home, at this point, you're gonna think that you're chopping way too much out of your trees, you're gonna think, oh my goodness, I'm gonna kill the trees. That is not the case. You know, the bigger you let the trees get, the more you have to take out. I let these get big. This also is a section of trees that's just in really good soil, and they just grow exceptionally well. So these trees right in here are pretty tough, and so you can see how we've just pulled out big chunks of trees have had to come out. And so it is one of those things that you know, it's important to trim them up good. So don't be afraid. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to move up to this next row, and I'm going to show you sort of how it goes from this to the final product. And so these we did the other day, and you can see how up in here, now these trees are done. And so you can kind of see how, you know, all that we've left are these fruit buds. You know, so now this fruit's going to be nice out, exposed to the sun. It's going to have the ability to grow to be good quality fruit. You know, don't worry, the trees are going to grow back. They always do. You can very seldom trim off so much that it's actually going to hurt them. The other thing I wanted to show you was, you can see the difference 1 year versus 2 years worth of trimmings mix. Right when I get to this spot where there's a little grass road, this is my grass road. These were trees that we pole sawed and pruned last year. This year I did not pole saw them, they didn't need it. You can see how little of brush. And when I spin around, you can see the areas where I had to pole saw. You see the massive amounts of wood underneath the trees and the extreme amount of brush. And so you can just see how, as I'm preaching, yearly maintenance is so much better. You know, look at that amount of brush versus that little bit that's left laying on the ground. So dramatic difference whenever you don't keep up and do your yearly maintenance on your fruit trees. All right, so as we talked about, every type of apple tree is a little different in its pruning, but each one needs pruned, and pruned pretty aggressively, as we've talked about. So these are Red Delicious. They have a lot of craggles, and they like to grow multiple centers. So this year I got rid of lots of multiple centers, so we pulled out lots of wood as we did in the Cortland. Again, every type of tree can be effectively pruned pretty heavily. These trees will grow back very good, have very nice apples. And then over here, we have Macintosh. Macintosh are sort of the kind of trees that most trees are, where they have lots of nice little feathers, some stick up, so lots of good things. Now, as I said, our next video in the series will be how to prune a semi-dwarf tree. And so please stay tuned for that, and we'll have that up shortly.